talk a little bit more about the monk life now that we're talking about monks. Monks have always fascinated me. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I was one in another lifetime or some connection to one.
Yeah.
As you know.
Yeah.
Being, with all the statues and everything else, and being drawn to the singing bowls and all of the different techniques for healing and whatnot. Walk us through, what was it like in a day being a monk? Like Robert Taylor is now a monk.
Yeah, yeah.
What is a day?
So that was pretty much from when I was 20 to 27.
So 7 years. Okay.
20s. Yeah.
In your 20s, that would be hard. That would be
me. And I do have 3 planets in Scorpio. There is, in our tradition, there is a monastic line. If somebody comes to be a monk, they do their astrology chart and see if they're capable. Yeah, if they're not capable, they would tell them, you're not going to make it. Now, the beautiful thing about India, you don't have to live as a monk full time. You can do it for so many years. So you can do it for 1 year. You can do it. I did it for 7 years. Mm-hmm. And it was funny at the time, tell you the story. This one Swami, he was working behind the Iron Curtain, as in the USSR, KGB, all that sort of stuff.
So he was before, or he was undercover?
He was undercover.
And so did you know?
His stories. Well, he was a great friend of mine. I used to make college speaking engagements for him. So at one point, right when I was at that point, when I was going to stop being a monk, he said, "Why don't you come with me and work behind the US, in the USSR?" Yeah, I was really, really attracted to that. You would have loved it, being a Sagittarian.
I would have loved it. I'm a karate girl, so I could only imagine.
Oh, yeah, whoa. So anyway, it was at that point I decided I was going to get married. But that would have been a whole different path. Now, years later, I dream of me and my guru on a bus in Moscow. So I kind of took that. He would have liked me to do that, Yeah. So in terms of being the monk, the Bible says, knock and the door will be open, seek and you will find. So the fun saying in India is, when you're ready, the guru will be there, if you're sincere. Mm-hmm. So my particular guru, I observed him 6 years closely, got to cook for him. He was an absolutely pure, unadulterated, God-realized being. So in Christian terms, it would have been living like Jesus, with Jesus.
Christ consciousness.
It would be just like hanging out as one of the apostles. He was absolutely, whatever came out of his mouth, his personal habits. One of the names for a guru in India is acharya. Acharya means one who teaches by example. So the guru never asks you to do anything that he wouldn't do himself. So when you get initiated, as it's called, there's a big ceremony, fire ceremony, and he gives you your spiritual name. And you're throwing grains into the fire. It's feeding God, it's believed to be in India. You're feeding God through the fire. So he gives you a name, and he then gives you vows.
So you have to take vows.
You have to take vows.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes. What are those?
Okay.
Yeah. Inquiring minds want to know what those vows are.
No meat, fish, or eggs.
I could probably do that.
No meat, fish, or eggs.
Okay.
And all of the food that you consume is done first as an offering of love to God. So we're called the kitchen religion. We're always cooking. Everything's offered to God. You can't taste it, smell it, or think about enjoying it. It's called prasad, means the mercy of God. So even, if you're a vegetarian, you're still killing.
Mm-hmm.
But when you
about that.
When you offer the food to God, no karma.
So you offer it first before you. So you prepare the food and then you offer it.
I'm preparing it for God.
Okay, I get it now.
I'm preparing it for God. Then I do prayers to offer it, and then we hope that God accepts
it.
So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, if you offer me with love, a leaf, a fruit, some water, I will accept. So it becomes spiritual food. And very first time I ate it, I knew this food was different. Yeah, this food was different. It had a very beautiful lightness to it. Yeah. So
could you taste something different, or
yeah, you could actually.
Was it like?
It's a feeling. You could feel this is not your regular Burger King fare. You know, yeah, this is something totally different. I was already a vegetarian, but yeah, when I had that food, it was different. So where were we? So you take no meat, fish, or eggs.
Yep.
No gambling.
I can do without that.
No gambling.
Yeah, I'm good.
No intoxication or drugs.
I'm good with that. I can do that.
And of course, when you're a monk, no sex.
I can't do that. I'm out. You know what? Can I be a half monk?
No self-sex, nothing. No sex. Yeah. So for those 7 years, you know, and then it's pretty tight. Also, people in the West would have a hard time with. When you marry, you're only supposed to have sex when you're hoping to have a kid, a child.
Oh, so it's not for pleasure. It's more.
More. Well, it can. That's a side thing, right? That comes. Now we are talking about the scriptures where the Kama Sutra is, which is the book on sex. Comes from the Vedas.
So this is so intriguing me. It's almost like it's like a oxymoron, kind of like whatever you want to call it. Thank you. There you go.
So what you got to do is consider why you're being a monk, why you're avoiding these bodily pleasures, because they're bodily pleasures.
And you being a Scorpio with all the
exactly.
How did you do that?
Exactly. So I guess I was just at that time in my life where I was perfectly comfortable with it. But let's consider why we're doing all this, to get out of the physical concept of life.
Right.
That's all it is. And you're chanting and hearing God's names, purifying your consciousness. You're eating holy food. And we weren't just in the monastery. We were going out and sharing the knowledge. We would go out every day and share the knowledge with people. You go to their home, they would feed you, and you share the knowledge. And it's not something where we're trying to convert somebody to something, because we're just awakening you to who you already are. The truth is, you are an eternal soul, and you're an eternal servant of God. Everything else is what's called false ego. False ego, and the Sanskrit for false ego is ahankara. Ahankara means, I am this body. Yeah, we have a great example in America right now of false ego. I won't mention any names.
So, sorry, going back to the monk, I have many questions over this. When you were, let's just say, you decide now 7 years that you now want to get married.
Yeah.
Did you meet somebody there, or did you? It was just you just had a feeling like you wanted to be with someone, or you were?
Yeah. Well, this is the deal. So also in India, I learned all about the different beautiful stories. Great stories. In fact, they say George Lucas got his idea for Star Wars from the Ramayana, which is the story of Lord Rama, Hanuman, Lakshman, Sita. So Chewbacca would have been Hanuman. Yeah. So I learned about all these stories. So I got called to go back to the UK, and we started a theatre company.
Wait, so you left, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So you left being a monk.
Yeah.
And then you went into theater.
Came back, yeah. We started theater. We used to travel around Europe, and I used to work with quite a few ladies. So it became obvious I need to get married now.
Yeah.
So that's how it all transpire. That's what actually brought me to America.
I'm sorry. It was what?
I was brought to America.
Brought to America
to do that same stuff, the theater, TV. Somebody brought me to LA, and so I was a year in LA and then came here.
That is very fascinating. Like just the transition and how you're in this one. You go to one life and then you go to theater. It's like So, but I can it's experience.
You're gonna love this. Things. So we lived in an ashram. It used to belong to Lord Coventry. This big mansion in the middle of England, a beautiful area on the edge of what's called the Cotswolds. So Malvern Hills had quite a few psychics. And I wasn't exactly in agreement with the leadership that was going on. So I decided I want to move out of the ashram. And I lived there with my family. I'm going to go move to a beautiful city called Worcester. So I'm going to go. I heard about this psychic in Malvern. So I went to the psychic and she did the reading. And then I said, I'm thinking about moving. What do you think? She said, well, where do you want to go? I says, I'm thinking about moving to Worcester. And she thinks for a bit and then she says, you're not going to even be in the UK in 6 weeks. You're going to be in California.
So that is a drastic change.
I get a call from when I'd been here, 78, 79, emceeing a festival in LA. So I happened to do a TV interview with this Swami. So the guy that ran this studio, ITV it was called, he calls me out of the blue. I got a year's worth of work for you. You want to come live in LA? So the psychic, and I thought she meant my friend, Nick, who had just gone, maybe 6 weeks before me, to be a principal of a school in California. She's mixing me up with Nick. But 2 days later, and that has a side story. Nick was the principal of my daughter at the school. It turns out he grew up in the same town as my mom and dad. And my mother was taught by his grandmother at school.
Wow. See how we're all connected?
We're all connected.
We are all connected.
It's amazing.
So very true.
And I've never been in a place longer than Detroit. I've been here since 84. Yeah. And why is that? I didn't know this at the time. There is a science called astrocartography.
I've never heard of that. I've heard of a lot of things, but I don't think I've heard of that.
Astrocartography. You probably can even do it online now. So what happens is when you put in your birth details, a map of the world comes up and you can see J and a line. That's the Jupiter line. Where's Jupiter going through? Saturn. Where's Saturn going through? So guess where my Saturn goes right through? Detroit City. So my good friend Nancy Ballman, a great astrocartographer, I asked her on my TV show, Nancy, I got Saturn going through Detroit. What happens? You get stuck.
Well, you've had some good times here, though.
I sure have. I got to meet my lovely wife. Yes, Pamela.
We're going to talk about that too.
Oh my gosh, talk about destiny.
Yes, that is destiny.
Yeah. So in India, you can actually go to university to study this. You can get a master's degree in Vedic, in Vedic astrology.
I mean, you need one. It's intense. It is so much to know.
My guru said, Vedic astrology, you need 20 years of study to become bona fide, 10 years to become bogus.
I mean, I seriously, there is so much. You guys had taught a class at my house many years ago, and I'm still confused. And not that you guys are great teachers. It's just there is so much.
So much.
You really have to do this every single day, pretty much, and keep learning and keep practicing because it is another career. It's another job. So my hat goes off to astrologers because it is a lot of work. It's a lot of information.
And again, if you approach an astrology guru in India to become his disciple, you have to have it in your astrology chart. You have to have certain aspects. Certainly Mercury is a very important planet, the planet of the intellect. You know, in the old days, the astrologer was also had to be a mathematician. Nowadays, you know, you can tell somebody to whip it up in 1 minute.
I think you put it in a program now. You just put it in a program and it spits it out. And it's like, oh my goodness. But although it doesn't take the place of being in person, just being in your guys' both of your presence is amazing and incredible and lifts the energy. And we talk about that a lot. As I'm talking to you, because I keep staring over, I can literally see your green aura. There's green all on the top, and then it's all purple. It goes out so far. It is like a beautiful magenta, purple, pink. It's gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous.
That's because I'm speaking the truth.
It's very true. Yeah, that is very true. I love it.
Truth is there. Back to yoga. It's a little different from the Eightfold Path of Yoga or any of the other yogas, because we don't ask people to give up their talents, but simply to use them, but in the service of God. So you can still do drama, you can still cook, you can still dance and sing in ecstasy. You know, the process of kirtan, which is chanting the holy names of God. We have instruments, drums, bells, and you know, you go into ecstasy with chanting the holy names of God. So it's not to give up what you've been born with, you know, your chart, your karma. You have talents already. And again, how about this? Henry Ford, local boy, big believer in reincarnation. So Henry once said to the San Francisco Examiner in 1928, genius is simply experience.
So being reincarnated over and over to the point where you're so, like, you have so much knowledge within your soul, within your body. Within your mind.
Well, you have all knowledge already. Mm-hmm. It's just covered over. So Mozart, genius, right? 4 years of age, he's composing concertos.
So how is that?
So if you look at his astrology chart, the 5th house of creativity, 7 planets, all conjunct. That means they have to be within 7 degrees of each other in the sign of Aquarius. So, genius. Genius. Mr. Bob Dylan, Gemini boy, 5 planets, all conjunct around the sign of Gemini. What is Gemini and Mercury? Communication. The only singer so far to get the Nobel laureate for his poetry. Genius is already there in the chart. It's already there. So all those talents you have, that is shown in the astrology chart, which is a map of you and your karma. The palm on your hand, that's a map of your karma. In India, the Brahmin does the palm and the astrology, and he also knows about omens. Sometimes you go to the Brahmin in India for a reading, you get there and you say, I already know what's going to happen to you. I saw the omen. You don't need a reading. And he tells you. So, yeah.
So that brings a question. What about free will? So we have that, if things are predestined,
yeah,
right? This is like you, Pamela, predestined.
Yeah.
Where does and how does free will come into play?
So you are the transcendental, eternal, spiritual soul. That's who you are. You're free, actually. When you get to your liberated state of self and God realization, you will be transcendental to the material world. So the more spiritual you become, the more transcendental you become, the more you become free from the material, which also means you become free from your karma. So my guru, being completely self and God realized, he was nothing to do with the material world. Even though, and Jesus says in the Bible, one should be in the world, but not of the world. One should be in the world, but not of the world. So they use the example in India of the lotus. The lotus is floating on the swamp, not touched by the dirt. So we have to be like a lotus in this world. So we're not American or English. We're not black or white. We're not Israeli or Palestinian. We're not Russian or Ukrainian. We're all souls. We're all the same. We're transcendental. So the more spiritual, the more by practicing spiritual practices, you transcend the karma. That's the very definition of free will. And it's really down to, are you going to serve God or mammon? The Bible says, are you going to serve God or mammon? Most of us are serving the mammon. In India, the mammon is called Maya. Maya means that which is not. So a materialist will criticize Connie Smock, for doing this woo-wah spiritual stuff. Actually, they're the ones in illusion. And why is it illusion? Because this material world and its manifestations are temporary. Everything is temporary and limited. But the soul and God, eternal, unlimited. Yeah. So it's just a question of vision. Actually, this material world also is the spiritual world. It's how you make it, right? It's how you make it. Another example is Divine Grace used to say, if you have millions of zeros, still a zero. You got to add the one for it to become significant. So this material world is like millions of zeros. When we add the one, God, then everything becomes significant.
So how does it come into play? Let's say predestined. So I have a choice. I can choose to go to, somebody offers me this job, but then somebody else offers me another job. Where does it come into play with free will and destiny? So let's say I'm like, I don't know which one to choose, and I just choose this one. Is that my free will that I chose that, or was that predestined? Are there other things that are there certain things that are predestined, and then whatever, we still have choices of where we go, but we may just take us on a longer path, but we're still going to end up in one spot.
Yes.
Is that?
So as we see from the Bhrigu Samhita, your whole life is written down in India. Why is it? This may seem amazing, that Bhrigu saw a movie of your life before you lived it. So he wrote it all down. He predicted it. And even from your astrology chart, we can make predictions. We can tell you also, say you're going for your job. Is it a favorable or an unfavorable time? This is what you can learn. This is what the king used to do. Is it a favorable time to store the grain? Because in 7 years, there's a famine coming. So they also in the Bible, they're making those great seers are making those predictions. So a good astrologer can do that to you. They can tell you when to make the moves, when to buy the house, when to get married, when to go for the job. Even so, everything has a chart. The United States of America was born on July the 4th, 1776. Now, why did those signers of the Declaration of Independence go out in the early hours to sign it? Well, 53 of them were Freemasons. They knew astrology. So they gave the United States a great chart. Yeah. So the same thing, every move you make, every breath you take. I'll be watching you. Yeah, every move. You can. So Pamela and I, we saw we had some compatibility in the astrology. So the same thing for you. When you now, you're starting also a good time with your show and also publishing, because you're going to be blessed by Jupiter with your moon in Leo. Jupiter is going to bless the moon in your chart. In my chart, as we speak, doing this with this spiritual lady, I have Jupiter conjunct the moon in Gemini. And just 2 weeks ago, I did a podcast. Jupiter. Yeah.
Gotta love Jupiter.
My Jupiter's in the 11th house, which is the house of the public. So here I am. See, this is how this stuff works.